For years, it's been the elephant in the room of the war in Ukraine, Crimea. A fortress, a symbol, a strategic linchpin. Well, a new strategic analysis has just come out, and it lays out a potential blueprint for its recapture. So what exactly is the plan? Let's dig in.
All right, so the first and most obvious question any military planner has to ask is this. Can Ukrainian forces just launch a direct head-on assault against the heavily fortified Crimean Peninsula? You know, a classic military operation.
And according to this analysis, the answer is a pretty unambiguous no. A conventional blitz is just not in the cards. The fortifications, the minefields, the sheer number of Russian forces there, it makes a rapid breakthrough almost impossible. And that reality forces a complete change in thinking.
So, if a direct assault is off the table, then how could Ukraine possibly achieve its goal of reclaiming Crimea? Well, this is where the strategy pivots from brute force to something much, much more interesting. It all starts by rethinking what a siege even means in the 21st century. We're talking about a whole new approach to warfare. The core idea is called strategic neutralization. And honestly, it's a huge paradigm shift. Forget storming the gates. The goal here is to make the entire fortress militarily useless from the outside. It's all about isolating and paralyzing the enemy forces inside, basically turning their greatest strength, that fortress, into a trap they can't escape.
And to really get why such a radical strategy is necessary, we have to understand just how critical Crimea is. This isn't just another piece of land. It is the strategic fortress of the entire Black Sea region.
You see, for Russia, Crimea is way more than territory. It's their colossal, powerful military base, the unsinkable aircraft carrier that lets them project power across the Black Sea and into the Mediterranean. But for Ukraine, getting it back is a non-negotiable objective. It's seen as absolutely fundamental to their national security. So you can see how its final status is going to define regional stability for decades to come.
In this quote, this really gets to the heart of the Ukrainian perspective. The analysis is crystal clear. Leaving Crimea under Russian control isn't a path to peace. It's just hitting the pause button on the conflict, a freezing that pretty much guarantees it'll all flare up again down the road.
Okay, so how does this strategic neutralization actually work on the ground? Well, the analysis breaks it down into a deliberate, three-pronged, unconventional siege.
The whole strategy unfolds in a very specific sequence. Step 1, functionally defeat Russia's Black Sea fleet to gain control of the seas. Once that naval threat is diminished, Step 2, cripple the supply lines, especially the Kerch Bridge. And then finally, Step 3, with reinforcements cut off and the peninsula under constant threat, you systematically dismantle the air defenses that are protecting it.
And that first prong, it's already showing some absolutely stunning results. Through a relentless campaign of missile and sea drone strikes, Ukraine has reportedly wiped out between 30 and 40% of the Black Sea Fleet's capacity. That's forced its most valuable warships to actually flee their historic home port of Sevastopol.
Now, the part about the Kerch Bridge is surprisingly clever. The objective isn't necessarily to just level it in one massive explosion. It's more about making it so risky and unreliable that Russia just can't depend on it for military supplies anymore. That forces them to use other routes that are way more vulnerable and easier to hit.
And the air campaign follows that same surgical logic. By taking out key radar systems, the eyes and ears of the air defense network, Ukraine creates what they call blind corridors. Each successful strike on a radar makes the next strike on another target that much easier, creating this cascading failure in Russia's ability to defend the skies over Crimea.
Now, this is where the timeline becomes absolutely critical. The analysis suggests turning one of warfare's greatest historical challenges, the brutal winter, into a decisive tactical weapon.
Sure, winter hurts any army, but this analysis argues it hurts Russia's rigid, logistics-heavy machine way more. Their heavy equipment gets bogged down, their command structure struggles to adapt. In contrast, Ukraine's more agile, drone-centric tactics, well, they're much less affected by weather and terrain, which creates this powerful asymmetric advantage during the coldest months.
But it's really important to understand that this entire strategy is conditional. Its success relies on several key things, both external and internal, falling into place just right.
A huge factor, of course, is Western support. The analysis points to a big shift happening here. While U.S. aid from previously committed packages is continuing, Europe has really stepped up. They're taking a leadership role and moving towards a much more sustainable, long-term industrial procurement model. That signals a stable, industrial-level commitment, which is a huge deal. And maybe most critically, Ukraine is not just relying on its partners anymore. It's building its own serious deep strike capability. We're talking about new domestic systems like the Flamingo cruise missile, with a reported range of up to 3,000 kilometers. This gives Ukraine the power to sustain the pressure all on its own.
So what does the endgame actually look like? The report outlines a final sequence. The shaping operations, that's the siege we've been talking about, continue until Crimea is pretty much indefensible. That's the trigger for a targeted ground offensive to achieve a breakthrough, severing the land bridge. And only then, with the peninsula fully isolated and its defenders weakened, would a final assault be launched.
Ultimately, this analysis doesn't present capture as some kind of certainty. Instead, it frames it as a distinct possibility, one that's built not on a single, heroic charge, but on a patient and methodical strategy of isolation and attrition.
And that leaves us with one last provocative question. Beyond this specific conflict, does this blueprint of strategic neutralization, of making a fortress useless without ever storming its walls, actually represent the future of modern warfare itself?